Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Just prior to the launch of Season 2, myself and a bunch of other creators had the chance to sit down in a call with Raven and Infinity Ward to talk about a handful of the changes in Season 2, Season 3, and beyond. You may recall previously a couple days back, we went over the general overview of what came out of that call, the various confirmations of things like plunder and gunfight and all sorts of other changes like that. I did want to save some of that information for this video in specific though, because it's all very important in the grand scheme of things. Now, during these calls, there's always a Q&A session where we can ask the devs about the upcoming content that they addressed, or, any other concerns and stuff that we have with the game, maybe things that we want to relay from you guys to them based off of comments and tweets and stuff like that. But curiously enough, in the Season 2 meeting and Season 2 call in particular, before we even got the chance to ask any open questions, Infinity Ward actually went out of their way to talk about the TTK. Obviously, the time to kill here in Warzone 2 is a very controversial topic. It was controversial back at the start of Warzone 1, and over time we saw it slow down quite a bit, which really opened up the meta in general. We went from having a very few specific set meta weapons, things like, the MAC-10, the DMR, the M16, the AUG back in the day, to in the Vanguard era towards the end of the year, we had multiple guns from Modern Warfare, multiple guns from Cold War, multiple guns from Vanguard, all at the top of the meta in a competitive and viable sense, could use a lot of different options, which is fantastic. The more diversity there is in the meta, the better. However, like I said, Infinity Ward did talk about their stance on TTK and basically address that. They didn't confirm or deny any potential changes. We'll get into that. They also teased what could potentially be a major experiment. I say potentially, it is going to be a major experiment with a big change that could potentially happen with the Warzone 2 meta that just so happens is already starting to develop here, at least based off the first initial few days of Season 2 being out. But first, of course, I want to talk about the TTK conversation. Like I said, this was more so them addressing it and talking about it for the first time since Warzone 2 dropped, really, and not really saying this is going to change, that's going to change. Here's what Infinity Ward had to say. Basically, when it comes to the TTK, the spot that it's at now, they feel like is a good medium ground, but it's not something that is set in stone. It could evolve over time, but there are consequences with how you tweak the TTK. When you slow down the TTK, basically Infinity Ward says that their data says that it hurts a wider variety of players. Essentially, it's going to have a larger impact on the more casual player base when you slow down the TTK overall. Say every gun on average kills in 600 milliseconds. If you were to slow that down to 850 milliseconds, players who do not have as good of aim as decent players or competitive players are going to suffer more, and ultimately the majority of the Call of Duty player base is that casual audience who maybe aren't so great at the game. So by slowing that TTK down and making each gun require more shots to kill, they are aware that they would hurt more players than the decent amount of players, the competitive players who are the player base minority. So that is their first initial concern with slowing down the TTK, is that it could, deter lesser skilled players from playing, which is their main moneymaker. That's the audience that they want to ideally target the most when it comes to their gameplay, selling the game, selling the store bundles and stuff like that. However, the TTK being too fast, which in certain cases it is this year, makes the game too twitchy, too much of a this person shot first and there was no stopping them after that. There's very little skill and competition in a gunfight, so they have to try and find a nice balance and a nice medium. Now, they didn't say they were leaning towards moving it one way or the other. I highly doubt they would ever move it faster than what it is now, but we do have this newly found quote-unquote issue. I don't know if they'd view it as that. I don't know if the devs would view it as that, but issue with the TTK with plated enemies. Certain weapons do more damage to plated enemies, and in turn that does speed up the TTK of certain guns here and there, and they're essentially using that as a way to balance guns between Warzone 2 and MW2 at the same time. I think their main issue though is the fact that they're trying to do universal weapon balancing. They're changing the cast off both for Warzone and multiplayer at the same time, and that's just not viable because of how differently the modes play. There needs to be Warzone specific tuning for the cast off 762 and multiplayer specific tuning for the cast off 762. That's a different conversation for a different day though. I digress. Basically, Infinity Ward and Raven's stance on the TTK is that they are aware of how many people are asking for changes to it, but they have to consider their options in both directions of who's affected the most and would it be better for what they're trying to make the game become. So I think it's very possible we're going to see TTK changes in the future, but I don't think it's going to be something that drastically happens, you know, right at once. It's going to be a slow rollout over time, if you will. So I guess maybe good news there. If you like the TTK where it's at, it's probably not going to change a ton over, you know, the near future. Maybe bad news though, if you were hoping to see this TTK slow down and have some weapons become a bit more competitive and gunfights require maybe a little bit more skill. We'll have to see as, you know, things change over time, if anything here from this call actually has a direct impact on, you know, the future of Warzone's TTK and gunfights there. The next part of the conversation actually has to do with snipers, particularly the ability to do one-shot snipers. Now, initially, when we had this call, they went out of their way to say, yeah, we're not going to have any sniper changes here in season 2 because we want to see how gameplay feels with the 3-plate vests across the board. And if sniping just takes a huge hit and players aren't using them anymore, then we'll have to look at the balance there and adjust things accordingly. And they also mentioned that sometime down the road, they sort of teased this, they are going to feature a new mode for Warzone 2 that has one-shot snipers universally. Some sort of like mini LTM, if you will, where snipers can one-shot. And it wouldn't matter if enemies had very little health and like maybe no plates or one plate on, or full health with all plates on. It would be a one-shot sniper mode similar to how we had for the majority of Warzone 1. But you might also notice that right now, I'm not sure what day this video is going to go out, so it's very possible it could be fixed, but at least at the start of season 2, snipers actually could one-shot if you were to throw on the incendiary ammo type, because landing a shot with your sniper to a certain part of the body, primarily the neck, head, or upper torso area, would allow for enough damage to be dealt with the sniper bullet that the incendiary burn could essentially finish the rest of the remaining health there and get a quote-unquote one-shot kill. Now, it's not true one-shot sniping, and also incendiary absolutely obliterates your ability to be effective with long-range snipes because of the insane drop-off that it adds onto a weapon with the reduced velocity, but it's an option for snipers to apparently and potentially one-shot in a sort of cheesy way, if you will. Now, this was also an issue back at the start of Warzone 2, and they fixed it rather quickly, which is why I say, who knows, by the time this video goes out, that may already be patched, that may already be fixed, and snipers are back to, you know, 2-shot minimums, depending on which sniper it is exactly, right? But really what the devs are teasing here with the upcoming one-shot sniper playlist and one-shot sniper LTM is it something that is actually viable in this overall meta? They're probably going to look at the success of that LTM and say, okay, tons and tons of players were playing this for long periods of time. The player retention and the player sentiment was fantastic. Clearly there's appeal for having one-shot snipers in the game, and they'll make their, you know, necessary balance changes and adjustments, potentially buffs to snipers based off of that. It's also, though, very possible that they are currently, as I'm recording this, well aware that these snipers have this quote-unquote one-shot glitch with the incendiary rounds, and they're seeing how players are responding to it. You know, back at the end of Warzone 1, where we did have the point in time where snipers could only one-shot within a certain range, and only the heaviest snipers could one-shot over long range, the sniping meta was definitely a lot less apparent in game. It was oftentimes a lot of rifles, a lot of LMGs, and very minimal snipers for medium to long range engagements, unless you were someone that was a big sniper fan and you enjoyed using the Kar 98K or the Tundra or whatever other options there were, right? So it's been an up and down sort of thing over the past year or so, from Warzone 1 now stemming into Warzone 2, but it certainly seems like they are teasing the potential that one-shot sniping could come back, given the data says so once they test things out and give us that one-shot sniper mode. So some interesting conversations here between the TTK potentially changing, but it also being a very tricky thing based on how they want the game to play, and the entire meta potentially changing with an update to snipers to make them a lot more viable. We'll have to see how things play out. Of course, as any new changes are introduced in game, as the devs reveal any new information here, I'll be sure to have you guys covered with that alongside everything else going on in COD. So make sure you are subscribed with those noties turned on. And if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know by dropping a like on it as well. But that is going to do it for today. As always, if you want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code IMMORTAL for a discount on all Scuff, G Fuel, Gamer Advantage, and Control Freak products. and the links for all those can be found down in the description below. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.